Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Reeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile art dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hello and welcome to Stitchery Stories live at the Podcast Social Club. This is part 2. Now, if you haven't listened to part 1 of the conversation, then I do urge you to stop right now, press stop, and then go and look on your list of episodes and find part 1. It's the previous episode. Because otherwise, frankly, this conversation will make no sense whatsoever, because we've already had 30 minutes of conversation. If this is the first time you've ever listened to Stitchery Stories and are wondering what on earth's going on, then this was a special recording with a live audience as part of a live podcasting event. So again, you may want to go and check out some of the previous episodes because this is a very different kind of episode. So again, I'd just like to remind you that I have not done any editing to this recording at all, because I want it to stay true to the live experience. So what you listen to today is exactly what the audience were listening to, warts and all, as it were. So let's crack on. And here is part 2 of Stitchery Stories live at the Podcast Social Club. And I'll hand over to me chatting with Mary Ann Toop and CarolAnn Allan at Stitchery Stories Live. Right, so let me see. Techniques. Now, CarolAnn's got a lovely pile of things. Is that to show us now?
Yeah,
or is
just
that for later?
well, it's up to you. I can show you, but it's really. I don't. Has anybody done any Stitcherbourree at all? Yeah, I've done a bit. So, I mean, it's a very old traditional method, and I'm by no means a Japanese expert, or don't judge me by the size of my stitch, but it's a really lovely way of actually stitching a design into fabric, and then obviously drawing all the threads so it acts as a resist. So I've just brought a few bits. This is a sample from a table runner that I was doing some workshops, so I don't know if you can see.
Sweaty armpits. Well,
it
annoy,
just shows
annoy the
you,
speaker,
so
microphones
it's obviously
now.
these bits. I haven't brought the big bit that I thought I had. Yeah, that's my English paper PC. So you can see here the stitches and how you can create different patterns. Apologies, because I thought I was bringing a big circle that I haven't brought. Yeah, no, I haven't brought it. So forgive me.
Isn't there?
So that's you can see on that piece actually how I've stitched and drawn the threads. It almost looks a bit like a tooth X-ray from the dentist.
But then you dye it, yeah?
Yes, you dye it with indigo. But it's that lovely sort of you can see here more if you. So that just shows you how you sort of knot it and you do your negative and your stitched areas. So apologies that I haven't brought the bit that I thought I was going to bring to dazzle you with. But it's just a really lovely method. And yes, again, it's like a slow method of stitching.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously you can do tie-dye, as people call it, where you do a lot of folding, winding round, and you can create some really lovely patterns. You can see on here, actually, my scarf, there's lots of folding.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
Yeah. But you can kind of see on there, just to show you. That's just folding. So you can create a lot of different.
Do you know, I've never looked at this in detail, so this is just fascinating.
Yeah,
for me, so.
I just like the fact it does take a long time to do all the stitching.
Yeah.
But that for me, I really like that.
That's the point.
Yes,
it
is.
Almost?
It is for me. Yeah, I know it's not for everybody, but it's a lovely method to do, and you can create a lot of beautiful things. Or if you've got a shirt with a stain on it, or say you can actually make that shirt into a new shirt by stitching on it or folding and dyeing it, and Yeah, so it's a good way. It's a good way of recycling and creating.
Yeah, I say, because then you're going to dye it. So
yes, yeah, and I love indigo. So it's just such a lovely.
They go beautifully together, don't they? Yeah.
So
right, that's good.
Apologies for that, ladies.
Excellent. So that's CarolAnn's favourite technique. There, Mary-Ann?
At the moment.
Yes, at the moment.
Just before I go on to techniques that I love, I just love meeting other textile artists, seeing what they do, and I love the way that it instantly sends the cogs going in my head.
You're thinking, what can I do with this kind of effect
I already know what I can do with that.
Go on then, what are you going to create?
Okay, so one of the constant fascinations of my brain at the moment is how I can go about creating something that looks like dragon scales. Okay. And I know you can buy fabric that is already covered in scales, but then it doesn't cover the range of different sizes, and you can't actually get the scale quite in the right place for where it needs to. Anyway, you get the idea.
It's a lot of planning.
She's off.
So it's a lot of planning.
So my red dragon that I've just completed, I spent hours upon hours actually embroidering the whole thing once it was created with the scales. Okay, it's not easy embroidering something that's already stuffed and has claws and things. Anyway,
it didn't want to be embroidered.
Fighting
did it?
back.
Yeah, it did.
But I'm just looking at this, thinking to myself, "Oh my goodness me! I can stitch away to my heart's content, dye the fabric, and then use it." Oh, that's wonderful. Will it work on silk?
Yes. I mean, it sounds like a lot of planning, but...
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But that's fine. If
How many times have you said that in a workshop?
Oh, a lot.
Because we all get carried away, don't we, as well? Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Right, so we're going to be seeing...
So other inspirations. I absolutely love the work. I'm sure that you know Mr. Finch. I love his kind of Alice in Wonderland style methodology of creating these creatures. It's wonderful.
Like kind of mice, aren't they? And
all sorts.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
He did it was at Yorkshire Sculpture Park.
He lives in Leeds.
Yeah. He didn't want to be a guest. I'll edit that bit out.
Oh, he would be fabulous. Anyway,
that's what he said. He's
very
shy. To do it,
Samantha Bryan's Fairies. Have you come across her? So that kind of thing I love, but from a sewing point of view, I adore playing around with my sewing machine. So free machine embroidering, especially with metallic threads, dissolvable fabrics, that kind of thing, actually creating my own lace. One of the first pieces that I made, I was following, there's a wonderful Australian artist called Meredith Warner that makes the most incredible machine embroidered. Most of her stuff is kind of replicas of underwater seaweeds and different plants. Just beautiful. Absolutely, definitely worth looking up. And so I started creating a giant oak leaf, just in plain brown thread. And I literally just started it, and a friend of mine passed away. And my head went to a completely different place immediately. And I finished making this leaf, and I dissolved it, and it all kind of shrivels up when you dissolve the fabric away. And I dried it, and I didn't want to lay it flat. I thought, it's a leaf. It needs to curl. It needs to do its own thing. And when it was all dry and finished in the morning, I just felt like I had tears running down my face, because it looked, to all intents and purposes, like a decaying oak leaf. And it just had all the emotion there, all the beauty of that friendship that I'd lost in I want to say pictorial form, but 3D form.
In a form,
yeah.
So, inspiration for me is kind of comes from all different places. I love experimenting with new ideas, as you can tell. I do belong to a sewing group, a textiles group, and we quite often have workshops, and I'm forever learning new methods. Quite often the pieces become put to one side, forgotten about, but just occasionally I'll come across a new method that I'll pick up and run with and create something entirely different from what the teacher had envisaged, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Oh, we've never done, and nobody's ever done that before either, have they? Fantastic. Right, well, that's really brilliant hearing about those particular inspirations and the techniques that you've both shared with us there. And I think really regardless of what's coming across very strongly and has done so in lots of episodes has been the fact that regardless of whether we're working with fabric or wool or metal, or I don't think it matters what it is, that it's that creativity and the impact that it has on our mental health and the fact that it does help us to cope with whatever it is that we're coping within our lives. And it's something that I wanted to kind of dig down a bit more with both of you, because you've both raised it in different ways. And I've had several guests have also talked about the importance of creativity and the sewing in terms of mental health as well. So, like Mary-Ann, you were saying that you found it as in almost meditative, as a kind of a mindfulness thing, and as a way for you to deal with the depression that was obviously very difficult for you, as you packed your job in because of it and so on. So I thought that was really interesting. And then the kind of community and enjoyment and sociability side of things that you've experienced with the Military Wives Project. Yeah. So do you want to just kind of dig down a bit more about the benefits that you saw from doing the Military Wives Project, and tell us a bit more about it? And I think you do some other community projects as well, don't you, CarolAnn?
Yes, yeah.
So let's dig into that.
Yeah.
A bit.
So obviously, as I've said, I came a bit later with the project, but I was there for a year. So we worked at Catterick Camp, Dishforth and Topcliffe, which is behind the wire. So I'm from, my father's in the RAF. We moved a lot, and at one point I remember my father going away for a year, and we didn't see him for a year, and then it was obviously there wasn't any social contact. Then it was a blue letter that arrived. Yeah. So when I sort of became involved with the project, I understood how the wives, and we had one husband, you can become very isolated, even though when you're on a military camp, you think you are part of a big family. But you've also got to remember a lot of them are young, very young wives. They don't have family nearby. Their life is through the military camp, and it is a very isolating. It can be very isolating. So the one thing about the project was the important thing was that there was a creche. That was very important, so that we gave women and the one husband time for themselves and their children. They knew the children were there in the next room, and a lot of them hadn't ever sewed before. They didn't know how to hand sew or anything. So they did. We did so many things with the machine, hand stitch. We did cyanotype. We did eco printing. We did screen printing with their words. So, and I remember the first time I went to Topcliffe, and I'm sure if any of the wives are listening, they won't mind me saying this, there were some very young wives there, younger than my daughters, with children. And I remember one girl saying, "No, I can't do it. So I said, right, let's have a cup of tea, and all we're going to do is we're going to sit and do a running stitch." And then she was fine. She was fine. She calmed down. She said, "I can do it." And I said, "You can you can do so much." And together I said, it's not about being here. Sometimes when we do things, we think we should be, exhibiting or something. And it's not about that. It's about starting to learn a technique and enjoying that technique. Yeah. But also the community, being together, having a cup of tea, coffee, and actually talking together and just giving yourself that time. And at the end of the day, it didn't matter if they didn't produce, you don't have to produce an end product. It was about being together. And it was really, really important. And also, at the end of the project, we did an exhibition with the Green Howards, and everybody produced a messenger bag, which demonstrated really about when the men went to war, they had messenger bags. So they did some words, what their family meant to them, and they screen printed it with Dion. And I remember, a lot of them were crying when they wrote the words, because it was what their family meant to them, but also what the army meant, in the fact that you're given a house and you're part of a family. So there was there's so many emotions involved. And a lot of them were saying, oh no, well, how are we going to do this bag? And I've said, well, we're doing all these different processes and you will create something at the end. So inside the bag, they had cyanotype pictures of their husbands or their family. Outside, they embellished them with buttons or badges, which, the badges off their uniform, old badges, not current uniform. And they produced the most amazing bags. And one woman, actually, they'd moved to Australia, and she finished the bag and sent it to the exhibition. And it was at the Green Howards Museum, which I would really recommend in Richmond. It's an amazing museum, absolutely. But all throughout the project, sometimes women, or some of the wives would have an off day, but you could literally just sit with them and say, right, we're going to do this today. Here's a bit of fabric. What do you think? And then, it just seemed to gel. It just seemed to work. And I think through stitching, crafting, you can almost calm people down, or just say, look, you can do this. We can do this. And it's just a small thing. We don't have to do a big thing. Yeah. But it works, and you're talking, and it's the same with any group, isn't it?
It is.
Always and they did a quilt with Dion, which was amazing, and each piece from the different women was to do with their family. Yeah. And when they put it all together, I mean, it was an amazing quilt. It was shown here. There was an exhibition here. So yeah, I'm really proud that I was involved with that project.
I'm not surprised. That's
really proud.
Combining quite a lot of things, isn't it?
Yes.
Plus, then of course, they've also learned. They've given people an opportunity to express themselves, and I think that's something that's quite often lost. And I don't think it matters. Again, it doesn't matter how people express themselves, but I think having that opportunity to do so is crucial. And it's just that we're blessed that we can do it with fabric and thread, and so on.
Well, two groups are still running. Unfortunately, they don't have a creche because of the funding. They have. Janome sponsored it. They have sewing machines. They have a lot of facilities. So two groups are still going, and they're now. And new military wives or husbands are coming in, and they're sharing the skills. Right. So it has a long-lasting effect, which has been really rewarding. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, Mary-Ann, you've got a slightly different. I mean, you've explained some of your story.
I'm sat here thinking to myself, how on earth can I possibly follow that?
No, it's fine, because everything is important. And,
I mean, I think you already shared a lot by saying about you were very ill, and that conscious creativity had really kind of brought you round, brought you back, however, and I think some of the projects that you've made have been quite significant emotionally for you as well.
I find it very interesting sort of listening about that community-based sort of project, the idea of people coming together to create.
Yeah.
I'm one of these people, I like to essentially go away and hibernate. I'm blessed. I've got a room in my house that I call my studio, trying to make it sound all grown up. And quite often I'll go in there and I'll disappear for hours on end. And I just love disappearing into, you get so lost in that meditative state of sewing that you kind of forget the outside world. It really doesn't matter what else is going on. But at the same time, as Susanna said earlier, about the fact that I do post quite regularly on Instagram, because what I tend to do is at the end of every day, I do post whatever progress I've made. And as a result of that, it means that I like the idea that I can bring a smile to somebody else's day. You know, that however bad a day they're having, you know, if they have a 5-minute flick through Instagram or Facebook or whatever, then generally I try to post something that's relatively cheerful. And I think to myself, if I'm bringing a smile to my face and I can bring a smile to just one other person's face, that's fine. That's all I need. That's job done.
Yeah. No,
but that's your well-being, isn't it, as well?
Yes,
that's made you feel a lot better. That's just as important. It's all important.
Yeah,
it certainly is.
Just a different way.
Okay, so I'm going to share with you a totally wacky idea that I've had, because I'm full of them. My son calls me a nutty professor type, you know, like Belle's husband, Belle's father from Beauty and the Beast, you know. Anyway, bit out there. So latest crazy idea is, having created this automaton, is wouldn't it be fabulous to create a giant one that's linked to a push bike, so that the parent can sit on the bike and actually pedal away and have the child flying on a dragon? I mean,
that's brilliant.
So sounds brilliant.
Yeah. So I kind of would love to go that direction with what I'm doing. I haven't got the space, the tools, the equipment, but
you've got the ideas though, and that's like so much of it. Sounds like, you know, wacky races. Dating ourselves. That bonkers professor there, and he had something like that, didn't he? It was like, I remember it used to change, didn't it, into a boat or a thing? Yeah. Oh, that's really great. I mean, from my point of view, in terms of creativity and so forth, why do I do this? You know, it takes a lot of time for me. As I say, it's kind of, let's call it a hobby. And when I sit down and I think, like the Embroiderers Guild group, you know, I haven't been there very long. When I'm one of them people who I finish, I can't say no, and B, I seem to get, oh, she'll do it. You know, I don't know. I must have this big label on my head. So fairly rapidly, I'm secretary, you know, and it's like organising everything. Then it's like, will you join the regional committee? And you're trying to say no, but it just, yes, and out it comes, you know, you just can't, can you? So I guess from my point of view, I do spend a lot of time organising things for other people to enjoy. And for me, to just the joy of organising this so that my guests get message out to a wider audience and that more people find you, to me is a source of great pleasure. It kind of fits in. I've got lots of hats professionally, but this kind of does fit in just with, again, that community side of things expressed in a different way. So, you know, I'll just get the old bit there. So I think that's really, really interesting how both of you have got we've all got the same ideas. It's just different ways in which we're expressing those, you know, and just back to and let's face it, it's just really nice, isn't it, to get bits of thread and fabric out and start looking at them and fiddling about. So, you know, let's bring it that. Right. Well, do you know, crikey, I'm thinking, we've got a whole hour and here we are, I've got, 10, 11 minutes. Right, so what I wanted to do was, and I normally ask about high points, but I think we've had some good high points from both of you already. So what I just wanted to do is, I've got two questions that I always, or nearly always ask, and we usually get some pretty funny answers to them. So I'm hoping we're going to get some pretty funny answers this time. Right, so disasters, right? So we've all talked about how brilliant everything is. And then one of my questions is always, have you had a time when something didn't go quite as you'd planned and was almost possibly a disaster? And what did you learn from it? So, and I've got one to throw in as well, but, you know, go ahead. Anybody got a funny disaster that we can share? And I've got 11 minutes, so.
I don't know that I class anything that I do as a disaster, because you can always learn from everything that goes wrong.
True.
I love doing 100-day goals. Don't know if any of you have come across those. currently in the throes of doing one at the moment. I'm currently at day 84. Previous one that I started on, I didn't get very far. I got almost halfway through, and things started going very wrong because I was trying to be far too ambitious. So I've ended up with 3 little birds that I've made that are sat on my desk at home permanently, reminding me that they need to be finished. So the birds are finished, but they've got no flight mechanism.
But that set you off on the path of...
Yeah.
And that set me off on the path of what I'm doing currently.
Yeah.
I decided, right, stop messing about with bits of cardboard. If you're going to do this, do it properly. So I've taught myself metalwork and I've gone down a different route. So I've learned from it.
So that was a fantastic way to learn out of something, wasn't it?
I don't know that I'd call it a complete disaster.
No, I think you were disappointed.
I was
weren't you,
very
with yourself?
disappointed, but not a complete disaster.
Cool. CarolAnn, have you got anything?
Mine isn't funny, but I was making a lot of silk scarves for a show and with eco printing, and I thought I'd measured the iron correctly, and I hadn't, and so I made all these silk scarves, and then they rotted. They literally started disintegrating, and that's a lot of money. I've got the little jewellery scales. I'm very careful when I measure my mordant now.
Oh, right, yes.
So that's not funny.
No.
It's a bit of a disaster.
But something to be aware of next year.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the one I'm going to throw in here was, is anybody going to the Knitting and Stitching show next week? Yeah. Right, so I'm part of the Embroidery Guild, and they had this project called Home. So the whole idea was we all created a piece that whatever it triggered in you to represent home. So I thought, I'm going to do this. So I was sitting there, my son does karate. I was sitting there, just at the side of the sports hall, trying to ignore all the squawking and shouting and stuff going on. Right, I'll do a bit of browsing. I really love aerial photography, and there's one particular guy I follow called George Steinmetz. He's an American. Love his aerial. He goes out on paragliders and stuff in the middle of nowhere, and I love the patterns. So I thought, I'd seen this one of, it was like circles in the desert. I thought, this is brilliant. I'm going to do that. It's a village, great. So I had this idea, and I'd seen another one, which was a village, and I got them mixed up in my head. Picked this one with circles. Great. I had huts, I just, so I've embroidered all this. So if you see it, it's brown and lots of circles. 2 days before the deadline, so I'd started this in February, the idea, started sewing it about the end of July, and it had to be done by the middle of August, so I totally left it to the last minute, still didn't get on with it, got on with it, did it, packing it all up together 2 days before the deadline, and you had to write a bit of spiel about what it was. I thought, I'll go and find that photo and credit the thing and give it where it is. And then I looked at it, and my heart sank, because what had I created? It was a damn cemetery in Ethiopia, which I knew it was. It was a cemetery. So it was like people buried everybody in these circular huts. It wasn't huts from the above. It was circles of stones with buried bodies underneath it. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Anyway, I sat there for 10 minutes and I thought, I need another wine. I need a wine at this point. I had a wine, and then I sat there and there's my son going, Mum, what are you going to do about this? I don't know. Anyway, 5 minutes later, I had the inspiration, and I've called it Homes for Bones. So there's this insane piece that's gone in, which I thought was going to be village huts, It wasn't, it was a cemetery in stone. Anyway, there we are. So that was my...
Ella made somebody smile.
Oh dear. And finally, we've mentioned this about techniques and workshops and so on. UFOs. Anybody got any UFOs hanging around that you might to own up to?
I've got 2 double quilts for my daughters, and I just need a bit of help. Finishing them. I was too adventurous. I've made them single
that's
ones.
That's theme, isn't it? Yeah.
I just need some help. I think somebody locally is going to help me.
I feel another workshop coming on.
Oh, yeah. My youngest daughter's like, when are you going to finish that quilt? Soon, darling.
I don't tend to have much in the way of UFOs. What I do have is I call it a non-started project. I'm one of those people that sets out with all good intentions, buys the fabric and everything, and then it sits there.
I found a few of those
I
yesterday.
have an absolute clangor going on at the moment because this time last year, my daughter desperately needed a new coat, a new winter coat. So this idiotic brain of mine, the mouth opened. I said, that's okay, I'll make you one. And so I bought all the fabric and everything. Last week, I actually got the pattern out. So the poor kid still hasn't got a coat.
No.
I had a rummage yesterday. Right, so... There's two, but I'm only going to get one out because I'm running out of time. Right, so this is not so much... Oh, God, Barbara. This is really social media worthy, this. Right? It's not so much unfinished as unworn, and you'll realise why. Look, this is... Oh, this lovely felted wool. Lovely design all over it. Do you know what the hell it is? Yes. It's a hat. Can you see why I didn't want to wear it? In fact, what you're supposed to do is tie it up at the top, but because I got so excited about doing all the machine embroidery, it's never going to work, is it?
Pull it apart and do a tea
That's
cozy.
what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Tea cozy.
It's short of a spout hole,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it? Let's face it.
Put a hole in it.
And as we do at workshops, what do? We're so excited that we're going to do something to go with it. So this is going to be a bag. Obviously, look. I mean, all the bits.
No. Other way around. The one that you've already made is the bag.
Sort of a
the
bag.
new one becomes
Could
the hat.
be a hat, couldn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
exactly. So, do you know what? There we are. I'd totally forgotten about this. 2001.
You've already got a handle and everything.
Complete with the vintage carrier bag as well, obviously, because that's where it lived. So, there we are. I thought that would just, kill yourself. You post that, you're dead. She's a very old school friend of mine, so I can say that to her. A long time, yes, not that we're very old. Oh, dearie me. Right, well, crikey, we've got 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I know, hey. So, do you know what? Look, it's got here, final wrap up. We normally have future plans. Very quickly, do you have a future plan? Anything to share with us?
Finish the dragon.
Finish the dragon, yay.
I'm going to give myself a couple of months off social media to self-develop. I feel I need to... I'm still doing all my workshops and I'm at Knit and Stitch demonstrating next week, but I feel I need just 2 months to myself.
Taking a bit of time to yourself.
I just need a bit of time to
myself.
myself.
And we don't do that enough, do we? So that's a real treat then.
Yes, so that's what I'm doing.
Lovely. My future plans. Well, as part of our Embroiderers Guild Hull branch, we were the smallest, and we've grown it to about 15 of us now. So we're actually having a exhibition at Burton Constable Hall in East Yorkshire. So we're very excited about that. So we're kind of digging out all our stuff to do an exhibition. So in terms of creativity, that's what I'm going to work towards. Right. Do you know what? Thank you so much, both of you, for coming here today, getting involved in this totally mad scheme of us doing this. Thank you to my audience there. So I hope you've actually enjoyed that. I'm sure you probably didn't think what on earth we was going to be doing. Neither did we. So, so thank you so much for that. The links on there is just easy ways for you to keep following up with Marianne and CarolAnn. And if you want to find more about Stitchery Stories, then it does have its own website, and I sometimes post on Instagram as well about it. So, there's all our links. There we are. Anything else? So that's the end of our Stitchery story for today. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you to my guests.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll press the off button now. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and information around this podcast. Please visit stitcherystories.com. Of course, you can listen to Stitchery Stories on plenty of podcast apps at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify and plenty more besides. You can also ask your smart speaker to play Stitchery Stories podcast too. But wherever you listen, why not leave us a rating and a review to encourage other people to listen too? I very much appreciate you taking the time to do that for me. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. Keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery stories.